Welcome to the Dietitian Side Hustle podcast. My name is Katie Dodd, and I'm a nutrition entrepreneur. I spent 7 years as a side hustler before diving into entrepreneurship full time. Before making the leap, I was bringing in 6 figures through my side hustle. If I can do it, you can too. This podcast is for dietitians, interns, and students who want to be inspired to start or perfect the side hustle of their dreams. Let's do this. Hello and welcome to the 288th episode of the Dietitian Side Hustle podcast, Health Insurance 101 for Entrepreneurs. Today on the podcast, I'm excited to welcome Caitlin McSorley, a registered dietitian and health insurance broker who helps dietitians and entrepreneurs understand their health insurance options. I am thrilled to have Caitlin here to break down the essentials of health insurance and what dietitians need to know when navigating coverage outside of traditional employment. So, Caitlin, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah. So, my first question for you is, can you start by sharing your story? What led you from being a registered dietitian to becoming a health insurance broker as well?
Yeah, absolutely. So it definitely didn't ever think I would end up here. I became a dietitian going on 5 years ago. And so started working in the hospital clinically at first. It was the first job I had offered. They offered health benefits. I said, that's perfect. At a young age, I was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes too. So good coverage was just always important coming off my parents' insurance at the time. I wanted to make sure I could get my insulin and get my medications and be able to manage my condition. So I took the hospital job, and then when I got curious because I knew I wanted to get into private practice, I knew that meant losing my employer benefits. And so I started doing a little bit of research. How do I get insurance outside of an employer? I joke about it, I took my research way too far, a couple of steps too far, and now I just got licensed in health insurance as well. So that's how I kind of got into focusing on dietitians specifically, but really medical professionals who are transitioning to private practice. Maybe they just hired their first employee. Maybe they're just thinking about making the move over there and helping them kind of navigate that space. Yeah.
Love that. And I like how you said, I just took my research way too far. This is like classic dietitian, right? Like, oh, let me
Yeah.
learn about this. Now I'm an expert. So,
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. It's like you never know when to stop.
yep. So, for someone who feels totally overwhelmed by health insurance, can you explain some of the basic terminology that people need to understand? Things like premiums, deductibles, coinsurance, out-of-pocket maximums, networks, and even the difference between public versus private market plans.
Yeah, absolutely. So, kind of starting with the basics, when you don't have an employer option, there really are two different ways of getting insurance. And so, the first route is going to be the public market, which most people are familiar with. This is the ACA, also known as Obamacare. And then the other side is going to be the private market. So, the two markets differ specifically because the ACA, those are going to be based on income. And as we see, or as we have seen, is depending on what your income is, you can usually get a higher or lower premium. And that premium is that monthly payment that you're making. The government was offering subsidies before. They're no longer doing this, but what that would do was offer coverage at a more affordable price for people who maybe were lower income. The private market premiums you're always paying full price for, but these plans are a little different because they're based off of your health status and not your income. So they don't care how much money you're making or how much money you're not making. You're always going to pay the same amount on here. However, since they're based on health, they're medically underwritten a lot of the times. And what that means is they're not paying out claims as often as the public market. So even though you're paying full price premiums, those full price premiums are often lower than what the public market is because on the public market, everybody is paying for every pre-existing condition. There's no qualifying or disqualifying condition for coverage on the private or on the public market. So that's like the main difference between them. So premiums, those can differ. Those are just going to be your monthly payments. There are some rare occasions where they're not monthly, maybe they're quarterly, maybe they're annually, different situations like that. But typically you see those being paid monthly. The next thing, deductibles. These are really going to be important. High deductibles or plans that you're going to have more out-of-pocket expenses before the insurance is going to kick in and pay their benefits also. So ideally, we all want a low deductible plan, maybe even a $0 deductible plan where you're getting the benefits paid out right away from the insurance company. But the number I really stress the most is the max out of pocket. So that's going to be your stop loss. It is the most that you're going to owe. And I feel like that is like really the financial blanket. How financially exposed are you is really going to be dependent on what your max out of pocket is. if you have a max out of pocket of 18,000 for a family, which is something I've seen before, then you're really financially exposed, and that's still a big financial hit if something were to happen and you were to hit that max out of pocket. Now, some max out of pockets can be as low as $3,000. I've seen them, and in that case, that's an emergency that we're able to afford a lot more than the 18,000. Um, so when it comes to max out of pocket, I kind of stress that one the most. But then there's a lot of different, I would say influencing factors. So you have your networks. Your networks, you have HMOs, you have PPOs, you have EPOs. HMOs are going to be smaller, restricted networks. So they're really going to cover that person in the county or zip that they live in. Another downside of it is with an HMO, you're going to need a referral to go see a specialist. On a PPO, you have nationwide coverage and you don't need any referrals to go see a specialist. So that's great because if you need to stop, and especially as business owners, if I'm talking to entrepreneurs here, we all know that time is money. And so if I have to go to my PCP in order to go see my specialist, I'm wasting more co-payments, I'm wasting more out-of-pocket expenses to see my PCP first, to schedule another appointment with my specialist, which I just don't have time to do in my busy schedule. So a lot of times on PPO, having the flexibility to just go straight to the specialist it's a really big perk, especially for entrepreneurs and just people that are busy. Um, Now another thing with like the EPOs and PPOs, an EPO is kind of like a hybrid between a PPO and an HMO. They utilize PPO networks, so you still have really good coverage, nationwide coverage. The only difference between an EPO and a PPO is that EPOs don't offer out-of-network coverage except in the case of an emergency, which ideally, that's the only time you're going out of network is in the case of an emergency. So really, EPOs I always recommend just as much as PPOs because they usually come at a lower premium than what a PPO comes at. So those are the main networks there. Um, as far as the co-insurance, you have a lot of different setups. Some plans are going to be copay focused, so you have a set guaranteed amount that you're going to pay when you see your PCP, when you see a specialist, when you have a visit to the ER or urgent care. And maybe it's $20, maybe it's $75, whatever it is. Those are copays, but it's a set amount, so you have a lot of predictability with those plans. Co-insurance is going to be based off of percentages. And so you have options from 80/20, 70/30. Really, you're going to be paying the smaller percentage of that. So if I'm paying 20% and then the insurance is covering the 80%, regardless of what that bill is, if it's $100 or if it's $10,000, I'm stuck with that 20%. So they offer a little bit less guarantee there, but you still know you're getting a good deal because you're paying the minimal amount on that
Yeah.
co-insurance.
Whew.
So,
This was so helpful. I'm like writing notes. I'm like, this is great. You're throwing all this information. One question I had,
yeah.
HMO, PPO, EPO, what do those stand for? Do you know off the top of your
You
head?
know
It's okay if you
what?
don't.
So I know PPO is Preferred Provider Organization.
Yeah.
Um, I'm not gonna lie to you. I think I got so used to the letters that I forget what they
Okay,
stood
that's
for.
no worries. That's no worries. My takeaway is HMO is really not preferred as entrepreneurs. We want to be looking at a PPO or an EPO. That was my
Correct.
takeaway from what you said. And
Yes.
I appreciated how you broke down the public market versus the private market. As a full-time entrepreneur, I have always been in the public market. I didn't even know that private market was a thing because I went into this like I don't know what I'm doing at all. I just know I need to have healthcare insurance because if something major happens, I'm not going into like debt or bankruptcy because of, healthcare.
No, absolutely.
So I like what you said that public is based on income, private market is based on your health status. And even what you mentioned about the copay and co-insurance, even up until now, I didn't entirely understand that. But I like that you said the copays are more predictability. You know the exact number where the co-insurance is a percentage of the total bill. So there's some wiggle room, but
Hmm.
biggest number, max out of pocket, because that's going to tell you the maximum you're going to pay. So,
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's the most important because we want to limit financial exposure as much as
yeah,
possible. You're paying for health insurance, it's really expensive. So if you're paying a high premium and then you've got a high max out of pocket, it's almost like maybe I should have just covered the entire emergency, you
yeah,
know? So yeah, making sure your max out of pocket is low
yeah,
is definitely important.
yeah. It's a whole foreign language. So thank you for helping to break it down.
Of course.
So, what are some of the most common mistakes that you see dietitians or self-employed professionals make when it comes to choosing insurance?
I think, and it's nobody's fault, but just having lack of knowledge. I think that it's so easy. We see so many advertisements for the public market, ACA, right? They're government sponsored plans. So I feel like they're the most obvious choice. However, there's a lot of background choices that maybe if we just don't do enough digging, we kind of just result to the first thing in front of us, and that's usually the public market. But in reality, the public market is a great space for some people. If we have coexisting conditions, I myself am on a public market because I'm a type 1 diabetic, and it was the best coverage for my insulin. But for somebody who maybe doesn't have pre-existing conditions and they don't know there are other options, there's much better options for them on the private market where they're going to qualify based on their health. So I would just say maybe lack of guidance or lack of knowledge and a little bit of digging in there.
Yeah, yeah, I know that's kind of how I found you. Is I actually found you through a Facebook discussion all about healthcare insurance. Someone mentioned you. I sent you a message like, "Help." And you did a great job at helping me to figure out what are the best options out there for me and options I didn't even know were potentially available. And I love that. It's just, know your options because there's probably more than what you think. And I know just from the discussions we had, some of it varies based on where you live, what's available, health, and like there's so many pieces to the puzzle. But I was grateful that you were able to help me see what was the best option for where
Of
I'm at.
course, of course. Yeah, I'm so happy we got connected because another thing that plays a part and you experience this yourself is the markets are always changing. The private market especially. If there's a plan you're like, I'm interested in this one, it might not be around forever. They're constantly changing networks and benefits and things like that. So there's always bigger, I would say bigger and better options coming out because they're always just constantly evolving their markets. So
Yeah. So, one of the biggest fears that I've seen that dietitians have when it comes to full-time entrepreneurship, making that leap of leaving their full-time job, is the fear over losing their employer-sponsored insurance. So, I know we've kind of talked about this, but I just really want to nail it home again about, the options that are actually available to entrepreneurs to alleviate that fear. Because one of the things, and I'll just share this, when I went to leave my job, that was one of my biggest fears. I worked at the VA. I had great healthcare insurance. And in my head, I didn't even comprehend that I could pay for my own insurance. And I was paying for my insurance at the VA. It was coming out of my paychecks. It just hits different when you're not paying it directly, it just comes out of the paycheck. So,
yeah. Yeah, definitely. So main options that you're going to have again, public and private market and finding which one's going to suit you best. There are other options that I don't always recommend, but there's a lot of health sharing plans
yeah,
that a lot of people are attracted to because they do offer lower premiums. But the way that these plans work, and they're not true health insurance either. It'll say that right on the card that you get that it's not health insurance. But since they're not regulated by the government at all, really they're not held liable to pay out any claims. It's kind of like everybody is pouring into one, they're paying their premiums, pouring into one pot. But let's say, and just for numbers sake, let's say we have 10 people on this health sharing plan. And at first, Joe is pouring in and Joe has a heart attack. So we pull out of the pot to help Joe with his heart attack. But then maybe my child breaks a leg. We're not obligated to pull out of that pot. Maybe that pot is empty now, and because we paid for Joe's heart attack, we don't have enough to pay for my son's leg. Something like that. So I don't ever really recommend those unless it's for short term. Maybe you just need some kind of coverage, some kind of help, and you're looking for a lower premium. Could be a quick fix kind of option, but when you're looking for something sustainable, which a lot of times when you're starting a business or you own a business, you're looking for long-term stability. And so in that case, I usually recommend private because as we see, public changes just like that. I mean, people went from paying $200 on a plan to expecting to pay over $1,200 on that same plan for next year.
yeah.
So private market's going to offer the most stability, which is something I think a lot of business owners are looking for.
Yeah, yeah. I like that you brought up the health share plans. I was actually looking into health share plans when I was facing this decision of, oh my gosh, healthcare insurance is so much money. But I think with anything in life, it's about weighing the pros and cons and what is the level of risk you want to take.
Yeah,
And even though my health is good right now, you never know. No one expects a diagnosis of a major health condition.
yeah.
So I was leaning heavily towards it, but then I decided I want to stay with more traditional. But
Yeah, and just the security, the guarantee that what you're
yes.
paying for is going to have benefits and that
Yeah.
it's worth your monthly premium. Because again, you work hard for your money, and it's like, and you notice it more when you're not paying or on an employer benefit, where employers, yeah, it comes out of your paycheck, and it's so nice because it's like, oh, I just get this with my job. But then when you do the digging, sometimes employer benefits are still really expensive. So
Yeah.
I know we work with a lot of dietitians that are with Nourish, and I've talked to a lot of dietitians who are offered Nourish benefits. However, they've actually found better and more, I would say, individualized plans on the private market for them at a lower price than what they would be paying on Nourish's benefits. So even if you are offered employer-sponsored benefits, it's always good just to do a little bit of research and compare and see what is actually good for you and not good for maybe everybody.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And one thing I want to add, of course, we are not accountants, but I know for my healthcare insurance, it is a tax deduction through my business. I am a single member LLC in the state of Oregon, taxed as an S corp, and I do work with my accountant. But what I am paying for my health insurance is actually a a or a deduction in my income. And so for me, when it made that decision of like, okay, yeah, it costs more, but then when I looked at the health share plans, the piece that got me is that they're not regulated. And they could fully in their right say, no, we're not going to give you money for this. And then I would be up a creek, which is the whole point of why I want insurance. So for
Right.
me, I'm like, you know what? It's a little bit more, but it's going to decrease my taxable income. It's a business expense. So another
Yeah.
thing to think about.
Yeah, absolutely. It helps benefit your business like that, especially if you start hiring people under you, right? So now it's like if I was an employer and I had dietitians working under me and I want to offer them benefits, even if I only want to cover 50% of their premiums, I can in fact pay for their entire premium, write that off through my business, benefit from that, but then also deduct their 50% from their paycheck. So I'm only really helping with 50%. They're getting a better plan, better coverage at a lower price, than you're getting that tax benefit on your business also. So
Yeah.
lots of pros and cons. What I will say is if you are on a public market and you're getting subsidies, so you're getting any kind of government help, you're not able to write that off for your taxes because the government won't let you like double dip in a sense.
Makes
So
sense.
that's again where that full premium, you're able to use the benefits for it.
Yeah, that is so good. Okay, so when someone's comparing plans, they're looking at a bunch of different options. They're trying to make choices for what's best for them. What factors should they prioritize? What should dietitians be looking for when they're choosing coverage that makes sense for their health, budget, and lifestyle?
Yeah, I think that's really a case by case situation. Of course, the first thing I'm going to say is health. If you have medications, if you have any kind of condition, making sure you find a plan that's actually going to benefit and pay towards that to help you just stay healthy. I mean, that's the whole point of it. So if I was to get on a plan that doesn't cover insulin,
Yeah,
it's no help to me, right? So number one is going to be health, but of course we have to look at finances too, because the better coverage on plans, usually that means a higher premium. That the premium and the deductible have a little bit of an inverse relationship, as in you get a lower premium with that higher deductible, and then vice versa, higher premium with the lower deductible. So whatever you're able to budget with is going to be the next thing I think to look at is what can I afford right now? Should I go with the higher deductible plan, knowing I have more out-of-pocket expenses as they come up, but a lower premium? Or is it worth paying a higher premium for a $0 deductible because then I need the benefits right away? So it's really a balancing act. It really just depends on so many different things, but I would say prioritizing your health and making sure that what you want covered is going to be covered when that time comes.
so good. And yeah, I think that's what makes it so hard when you're looking at these options because you're like, well, gosh, this one's so expensive every month, but this one's more affordable, but then I'm gonna have to pay a ton of money, out of pocket. So yeah, it's very
Yeah,
hard.
it's a big balancing act. I always say like health insurance is kind of like a pay me now or pay me later situation, unfortunately. And
Yeah.
honestly, all plans kind of suck. But I hope I'm able to help people find the plan that sucks the least.
Yeah.
Because it is the most expensive thing you pay for that hopefully you never really have to use also.
Yes.
So, yeah.
100%. Yeah. So, any final advice for dietitians who are overwhelmed with finding the right health insurance for them?
I would say get connected with somebody who is in the field for sure, someone who has a little bit more knowledge. My first piece of advice, don't put your number in to get a quote online. I made that mistake during my research. And if you do that, you will get blown up by like, I'm not exaggerating, 50, 60 calls a day. And as business owners, I know we're using our phones for business related functions. And it's just such a disturbance. Not only that, but you will get calls for an entire year, if not more than that. Um, so don't apply for any quotes online. I would want to talk to an agent directly who only has your number and your number is not being sold or your information is not being sold online. But yeah, getting connected where you can ask direct questions and get direct answers instead of doing research and getting the opinions of many people who have maybe had bad experiences, good experience with certain situations and such. Just connected with a professional.
That's such good advice. I was actually just talking to a friend this week and they said, I think I put my number at some point into one of those online systems because they still, and it was a long time ago, they're still getting calls.
I still
So,
get that.
yeah. Yeah,
Yeah, I
that's
still get them and I'm like, oh, nope, I won't answer. You can always put your link or your name on the do not call list.
Yeah.
That is helpful. It slows them down, but it doesn't ever stop them completely.
Yeah. Yeah. So talk to the agent directly. And good news for people listening. Caitlin is an agent, and I'm sure even if she gets too busy, she has friends that she could always refer to. So I would love if you could share with listeners how they can connect with you or more, learn more.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the easiest way to get connected is through email, which I have insurancewithcaitlin@gmail.com. So feel free to either reach out for information through that, or reaching out through Katie. We can get connected that way also. And then also you were right, I do have a lot of referral partners. So even if I'm not able to help you, I 100% know somebody that can be trusted and that can help you in your situation. So yeah.
Yeah, awesome. Is there anywhere like online that people can find you, like any social media channels or anything that you have, or is it more just emails best?
Email is best. I do have a Facebook page. However, kind of with social media, it kind of gets lost in there. I'm not gonna lie. But I do also have a Calendly link that is available on that Facebook page, which I'd be able to share. You would have access to in order to book an appointment. I do free consults, so 30 minutes. You can book a time on my calendar. We're able just to compare your current situation and see what else is out there. See if you're missing out on benefits somewhere.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming on the podcast, Caitlin. I appreciate you sharing this with our listeners. And I'm also so grateful that you, as a dietitian who understands how our brains work, also understand the healthcare space because it is confusing. So
Yeah, absolutely.
thank you so much for being on. I appreciate you.
Thank you so much for having me. This is really fun and yeah, feel free to use me as a resource. Anybody who's listening, would love to just see if I can help at all.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thanks so much.
Hey, you guys, I hope that you enjoyed that episode. It was so fun to record, and I felt like there was so much valuable information jam packed in there. Now, I do want to acknowledge that my volume was very low in that interview and maybe a couple other recent interviews. I didn't realize that there was a setting in my Zoom where my output audio was like at 10%, and I've been like battling and fighting with my mics and trying to fix this issue. One of my mastermind students yesterday showed me how to fix it in Power or not in PowerPoint, but in Zoom. So hopefully that issue is fixed moving forward. So thank you so much for listening to the podcast. As always, go to katiedodd.com to learn more about all the ways we can work together. And if you have not yet picked up a copy of Dietitian Side Hustle, head on over to Amazon. The book is available in paperback, hardcover, Kindle, and Audible. And if you've purchased the book, thank you so much. If I could ask the biggest favor for you, if you could please go to Amazon, give me a review. It helps so much. So thank you guys for listening to the podcast, and I'll see you all next week.